Hey, this is Kevin with Action Sports Logistics, North American distributor for Delta Hydrofoil, here with George, the creator, the designer, and the head man at Delta Hydrofoil.
So I sweep the floors, wash the bottles.
There you go, there you go. We're here to talk to you about the high aspect line from Delta. We have some wings that have been proven, time and time again throughout the industry. We also have some new stuff in our line that we're very excited about. We're just gonna go over, let you know which hydrofoil wing might be best for you, tell you all the ins and outs. So yeah, George, the thing that obviously a lot of people know is that larger wing, larger guy, lighter wings, but there's a lot more to that, especially when it comes to high aspect wings. If you just give us a brief overview, that'd be great.
Yeah, so first of all, we're talking just about wing foiling now.
Right.
I would not recommend any of these wings for kiting, although I would recommend all of these wings for surfing. Okay, but as far as these wings, not kiting.
Right, right. And why is that?
Because you just need a lot less wing for kiting. The kite pulls up, you can create thrust by diving the kite, so you just need a lot less wing. Now some of these wings, like the new 700 or the 850, I mean, in terms of just surface area, they seem like they're the same size as what you would use for kiting, but for kiting, you don't need them to be this high aspect. For winging, you really need efficient wings, and that means high aspect wings for the most part.
Sure, sure. And high aspect, just for those who don't understand what that term means, can you explain that, please?
That just means a long, skinny wing versus a short, wide one.
Right. So and then for those of you that, we talked about, length versus width, what I always tell people, and correct me if I'm wrong, so for example, something that had an aspect ratio of 1 would be like a square.
Yeah, it would be a square, yeah.
Right. This one, I believe you're saying that the 700, I believe you told me is an aspect ratio of 11.
It's 11.
Right, so
yeah.
essentially 11 times longer than it is deep.
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's like when you're looking at wings, whether they're Delta or other wings, and they give you the aspect ratio, that's kind of what they're talking about.
Yeah. So for winging, you need a lot more surface area because the wing just has less power than a kite.
Sure.
Yeah. And also you need more efficiency because actually, think about it, if you're kiting, what's a typical kite size that's blowing 15 miles an hour? What are you on?
Right, if I'm on a twin tip, I'm on 14 meter for me.
Yeah, or if you're foiling, maybe a 10.
Right, of course.
So what do you have when you're winging? A 5.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing is smaller,
Right.
It doesn't pull you up and you can't fly it around.
Right.
So all in all, you need more hydrofoil because your power system just isn't as good.
Right.
So I think for heavier guys, which actually hurts you the most when you're winging is if you're like 230 pounds, you have the most challenges.
Sure.
So I would recommend the biggest thing we have, particularly for learning, which is the 1740.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting because obviously the overall efficiency of the design matters just as much, if not more, than the actual size of the wing. There's other wings that I've used that have been 2,000 plus that I have a more difficult time with as opposed to the 1740.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of other variables, the length of the fuselage, the board you're using, but really all things apples to apples, as I say, all things equal. I found that I had a much easier time on this as getting started out versus some other larger wings.
Yeah. Well, I've put a lot of work into figuring out the airfoil section, which is sort of the cross-sectional design of the wing, which is very important in terms of how the wing behaves. And I've been at this for many years. I think I've really found a design that doesn't stall, that creates a lot of lift at low speed, but in a predictable way, and then doesn't suddenly lose lift and drop you back down. It's
Sure.
just, like with these things, you can go slower and slower and slower until you just kind of plow to a stop and then sink.
Right, right.
Where other wings will lift you up real quick and then bang, back down.
Right, yeah, we call it like dolphining, always going up, going down, trying to figure it out. Right,
Yeah.
so kind of the balance point.
And all these wings actually have the same airfoil profile across the entire line.
Yeah, we talked about that before as well. I mean, as you notice, you guys can probably see it's very apparent. As the wings get smaller, the aspect ratio is also increased. You look at the 1740 versus the 700. You have a much higher aspect ratio. Like you said, these kind of look like knives when you start getting down to the smaller wings.
Yeah. There's a reason for that, because if I wanted to make a 1740 and I wanted to make it at an aspect ratio like that one, 11, this thing would be out to here.
Right.
And it's just not practical, because what happens is when you get into these really long wings, they stabilize the hydrofoil in roll. In other words, this thing is planted, it's going through the water. It doesn't want to change its orientation very quickly. And once you get much above 110 centimeters in span, the board gets harder to manage. Like it's
Sure.
hard to steer. It's stable, but it's not controllable. It just wants to go in one direction, and that's the only direction you're going.
Right, and that's one thing I found is like almost like I call it the aircraft carrier. There's some of the beginner wings that I've used, and they were stable, they were good, they helped me get up. But once I go to turn or make an adjustment, it really is difficult to redirect that foil. So
Right, so that's why the 1740 isn't aspect ratio 11. Not
makes
that I
sense.
wouldn't want to do it, but it's just not practical. But what happens is, as the wings get smaller and smaller surface area, I can do it.
Right,
Like a 7, so, this still has less span than this.
right,
A lot less. It's kind of shocking when you compare these two wings. The 1740, the 1450, and the 1280 all sort of have similar aspect ratios.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, these would have been considered high aspect wings. Now, some people say, well, it's really a mid aspect wing. Well, whatever. It is what it is. It's a certain number, right?
Sure.
But then when we drop down to the 1050, the aspect ratio gets bumped up.
right,
And then that's kind of the same. The 850 and the 1050 are somewhat similar. And then when we drop down to the 700, this is actually exactly the same span as the 850.
Yeah. So typically, you're going to have three factors, as I understand it, right? You have, weight, power, and discipline. Let's say. So it's easy to tell somebody, oh, you're a heavier guy, use a bigger wing.
Yeah.
Or you have more power, use a smaller wing. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit as to, who some of these wings might be for, as opposed, other than just bigger or smaller?
I think for learning, you really want the bigger wing. So you'd want, if you were, someone weighs a typical weight, 180 pounds, 170 pounds, or whatever, even 190 pounds. I would say if you're learning to wing, go with the 1450. It's enough wing, and it's got the efficiency. It's also maneuverable because it's a little bit shorter span.
Right.
And you can learn on this, and you won't outgrow it super quick. Right? If you're 200 pounds or whatever, greater,
Right.
I would go for the 1740 to learn.
Right.
And then from there, what I found personally, and from a lot of people that I sail with, as you advance and you spend more time on the water, you start to ride smaller wings.
Sure.
And even if you're heavy, so like one of the guys, Jason, that I ride with all the time, guy's super stoked, just wants to be on the water all the time.
Right.
All the time. Right. Oh, we gotta go.
Right.
It's blowing. We're going. So okay, calm down. Yeah, we'll go. 230 pounds.
Sure.
6'2", whatever. He's riding a 600 now. He's riding an 800 now.
Right.
Why? Because he's good. He's strong, and he rigs a big wing. He goes out lit, and he can pump hard, and he can pump hard for a minute if he has to.
Right.
And he'll get going. Once he's going on the 600, he's going.
Right.
So a lot of times, he'll be on an 800. So, you're talking about a 230-pound guy out on this,
Right.
wing foiling. The advantage is it's super fast and it's super maneuverable.
Right.
Like, you got the fast ride.
Right.
Whereas something like this, it's like, well, with this, it's cruisy.
Right.
Like you can park yourself on a swell, not even a big swell. Now you just glide.
Right.
You go slow. You don't need a lot of power. Only Muhammad Ali could float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
Right. Right.
This floats like a butterfly. This stings like a bee.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely. I mean, and another thing that we talk about, in terms of, like I said, different disciplines, is you have people that are weight foiling and or pumping.
Yeah.
So you see guys that are obviously, as they get better, they're moving down in size.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've gotten a lot of rave reviews out of, guys using the 1450, even the 1740, in terms of pumping, just because there is so much glide associated with the efficiency of these larger wings for people that are riding, again, behind a boat and or just pumping. So.
Yeah, but I think as you progress, so pretty much most normal sized people, I would recommend the 1450 as a beginner wing. And you know, if you're lighter, maybe you're like more 150 or something, then I would even recommend the 1280 might be okay.
Sure.
But then as your skill level builds and you want to do some different things, then yeah, drop down to the 1050 or the 850. I just find as I progress, I want to ride smaller wings. And
Sure.
right now, I'm riding the 700 all
Right.
the time. That's me. I'm
Yeah.
Mr. 700.
I think I'll be a 1450 guy for life.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll
you
see.
say that now.
Well, yeah, so depending on the discipline, like I said, depending on your size, for sure there is some overlap here. What about someone that kind of wants to build out a quiver? How many wings do you think would cover, you know, any wind range, any circumstance for someone that's like, I'm avid, I want to be out on the water no matter what. Two wings, three
yeah,
wings?
I'd say two.
Two?
Yeah. Like
Sure.
Two. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah. So again, like so, two wings. You know, like I said, if you look at kites and wings, a lot of times you try to build a quiver as economically as possible, but at the same time, you want to have that optimal performance.
Yeah.
So
but once again, I just want to restate, like, I wouldn't use any of these wings for kiting.
sure.
And the reason I want to restate it is because people are doing it, and it's bad. It's right. If you could say, "Oh, this is a small wing; it'll be fine for kiting." No, it won't. You can do it,
Right.
but no,
It's not ideal.
Don't.
Not ideal.
don't do it.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the overview. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to hit us up at deltahydrofoil.com, actionsportslogistics.com. Any of our wonderful ambassadors, retailers, team riders, happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have. George himself is often readily available and just happy to get people out on the water. Thank you for listening. Let us know if you have any questions.
All right.
Thanks, George.
Yep.